Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this very important webinar on topic saving human resource costs and fulfilling mandatory NAP compliance by hiring apprentices. Let me start this webinar by thanking all of you for taking this time out on this Saturday afternoon and being here today. In this webinar today, we'll be looking at some of the very important points like why apprenticeship, what are the policy perspectives, what are the different benefits of engaging apprentices to the industries, and how can industries engage apprentices. At the end of this webinar, our experts will be having a Q&A session. So you may type in all of the queries which you may have, and we shall try to respond to most queries, like time permitting. And like without further ado, let me first invite our expert, Mr. Abhishek Pandit, to take this webinar forward. Pandit is Director EduVantage, which is one of the leading service providers of apprenticeship in the country. He is closely working with about 150 clients, which include multinationals as well as large international companies for apprenticeship and recruitment. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dhruv, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm hoping that I'm audible, Dhruv.
Yes, sir, you are.
Great. So in the next 15 minutes to 20 minutes at max, I'll try and give a view of the apprenticeship program and the benefits that it has for the industry. And since it's 100% industry focused, we will talk about how industry can utilize the apprenticeship program and how are the industries today already utilizing it. And end of the day, how is this a win-win program for the apprentices, the industry, and for everyone in the ecosystem as well. So just to give you a view, I'll share my screen. I have a short presentation. I'm hoping my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Right. So essentially, there's a lot of confusion with the industry in terms of what is an apprentice, what is apprenticeship and who is an apprentice, and what does it entail, what is the difference between apprenticeship and an internship, or maybe contract labor. So those are some of the questions which we get normally. And as far as apprenticeship is concerned, it's an act that is there by the government of India. There's an Apprenticeship Act 1961. And all of this comes under the act, and apprenticeship is a very formal way of inducing students into the industry. And it is a training program which is there for all candidates which join the industry. And it essentially has two programs. One is a basic training, which is theoretical training, and then on-job training. So and there's a formal contract between the candidate and the industry in terms of apprenticeship. Internship, on the other hand, is a very informal relationship between the intern and the industry. And apprenticeship, like I said, is covered under the Apprenticeship Act 1961. And there are rules that are there under the Act, and it has been recently amended in 2014. And let me mention in the same breath that there has been a sea change in the past 2 to 3 years. And you would notice that previously apprenticeship was focused more towards ITIs, fitters, mechanics, etc. But today, apprenticeship has opened up the entire ecosystem from services to manufacturing to all job roles that are there in the industry, and it could be under any industry whatsoever. So there is no limitation in terms of which industry or what job role. Apprentices can be hired anywhere. And as far as companies which have more than 30 employees are concerned, having apprentices is mandatory under the Apprenticeship Act. Let me reiterate, over 30 employees, apprenticeship is mandatory. You can have as many as little as 2.5%, which is mandatory, of your total employees, up to 15% of the total workforce. Now, this includes both contractual as well as permanent employees of the industry. So if you have a company which has 100 employees, then you must have 2.5 employees, which is 3 employees, as 3 of them as apprentices. So that's what the Act says. I'll not get into the details of the Act, but this is something that we all need to know. For all companies with the employee strength of 3 or less, the Act is not you're not eligible for apprentices. Anywhere between 4 to 29, it is optional. You can have apprentice of 2.5%, which is, if you are 4, then you have 1 apprentice, and up to 15% of your employees. And the apprenticeship duration is between 6 to 36 months. That is something that the employer can decide how long will the apprentice be an apprentice. And for all employees, for all organizations with more than 30 employees, apprenticeship is mandatory. Like I said, 2.5 to 15%, 6 to 36 months duration. The duration again can be fixed by the employer. And anyone who's not been in the workforce before can become an apprentice. So this is a typical question which comes: who can become an apprentice? And he need not be someone who's just 18 or 16 years old. If the person doesn't have an ESI or a PF number, he can join the company as an apprentice. As far as qualification is concerned, there is no minimal qualification that is currently specified. He can be anyone from 5th pass to 12th pass to a graduate or a postgraduate for that matter. So there are many companies who are taking graduates and postgraduates as apprentices as well. And there are many who are taking school dropouts also as apprentice. It depends on the role in which you're taking them. And like I said, you can take them under any role in your organization that you would want. As far as the roles are concerned in the organization, today under the Apprenticeship Act, there are designated trade and optional trades. I don't want to get into the technicalities right now, but essentially all roles that are there in the industry today has been defined over the last few years, and pretty much the entire industry ecosystem is there. But in case there is a specific industry, if that job role is not there, then that is easy to be added these days. We can easily add that job role into the apprenticeship umbrella, and you can hire candidates in that job role as well. And if you take them as apprentice, then all of those candidates have to be registered under the apprenticeship portal. That is mandatory. And once they're registered under the apprenticeship portal, they'll be considered as an apprentice, and they will fall, then they'll be counted against the 2.5 to 15% bracket of apprentices that you need. And every apprentice is expected to have the Aadhaar card. And I'll talk about the scheme called as NAPS, National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme, and the benefits that the industry can take from this scheme moving forward. So as far as National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme is concerned, the government wants to push apprenticeship. If you look at it from the government's perspective, this is one area where they can talk about providing employment to people across the country. So it's an easy way for the government to say that we've given employment to so many lakh students. They have a target of about 50 lakhs right now to provide apprentices. But the government is way below the target. Right now, there are around 4.5 lakh apprentices. And there's a long way to go. As far as the program is concerned, if you see the financial support, there is a direct financial support that the government is giving. If the industry takes the apprentice on board, then the cost of training, which right now is defined as 7,500 rupees for a 500-hour training, is being borne by the government. So the government reimburses the cost of the training. You might say this is too less, but it is something better than nothing. And of course, the meat of the financial support actually comes in the reimbursement of stipend. The stipend that you will be paying to the candidate, 1,500 rupees per month or 25% of the stipend. Let me reiterate, 1,500 rupees per month or 25% of the stipend, whichever is lower, will be given to the company directly every month. So if you take, let's say, 10 apprentices, then 15,000 rupees per month will be coming directly to the bank account of the organization. So this is the financial support that the government is giving. And of course, the entire program is technology enabled. You'd be surprised to know that there is absolutely no paperwork that is needed. No paper moves from any desk to the one desk to the other. It is completely technology enabled, and hence it is very friendly for us to apply and move ahead as well. So in the NAPS program, there are three key stakeholders, of course. One is the employer, the organization who's taking in the apprentice. The second one is a training partner, which is a basic training provider. That training partner can be the industry themselves. So industry can train the candidate, or industry can also take help of an outsourced agency for training, because the cost of training is borne by the government. And of course, the apprentice, who's the one who's going to come to the industry and work in the industry. As far as the apprentice is concerned, uh, the common question that the industry gives us is, we have contract labor coming into the company and we have apprentices coming into the company. Can they do the same job on the shop floor? Absolutely, they can do the same job. From the apprentice, you can ask him to work in your shop floor and get the same job done, and the output will be as good as the output that a contract worker will be providing to you. And hence, any candidate who's coming in can come in as apprentice when he's joining the company. Coming to the Apprenticeship Act, the Act clearly says that any company which has more than 30 employees today needs to have an apprentice. This has been revised. Initially, it was 40. Now it is 30. You can have between 2.5 to 15%, like I mentioned earlier. 2.5% is mandatory. And you can, as an establishment, outsource the basic training, and or you can use services of TPA, which is a organization like Eduvantage, who can come with the organization and do the entire support of apprenticeship with the organization. The TPA comes, it helps in registering the candidate, it helps in mobilization, and it helps in training, it helps in finally assessing and certifying the candidate, and does the entire compliance for the organization. And of course, there's returns that needs to be submitted on the portal, etc. All of that will be done by a TPA. That is permitted by the Act to be done. So these are recent changes that have happened. Now, some of the key points. Now, this is actually the main slide of the entire presentation. I would want you to focus only on this slide, and this will give you pretty much everything that is needed to know. Like I said, any company with more than 3 employees can apply for apprentices, and companies can keep apprentices between 2.5 to 15%. And the other big benefit by keeping apprentice is the fact that there is no ESI and PF contribution that needs to be made for these apprentices. So they are not employees. Because they are not employees, the Apprenticeship Act clearly says that you don't need to provide ESI and PF. And if you go to the ESI website or the PF website, they also clearly say that in case the candidate is an apprentice, then it is exempt. You don't have to pay them ESI and PF. Of course, there's a reimbursement of 1,500 rupees per month. So the total number of apprentices that you hire, you can multiply by 1,500. That's the amount that you'll be getting per month. And the cost of training is reimbursed. And another benefit that the industry can see is that because they are not employees, they are delinked from the State Minimum Wage Act. So you don't have to pay them the minimum wages of the state. It is the table below actually gives you, in fact, the next slide I will give you the view in terms of how much you need to pay for the candidates. You don't have to pay them the minimum wages. They are not linked to minimum wages. Of course, the TPA can mobilize the candidates and provide apprentices, or if you have candidates coming in, you can take the candidates on your own as well. I see some questions coming in. I'll just take the questions at the end of it, but I would request the audience to keep posing the questions as and when you get, and by the end of it, we will discuss. So the table we've already seen, any company with more than 30 employees need to have apprentices. So as far as the training is concerned, these are the typical route for apprentices. One is the ITIs who come out. Some are graduates, some are diploma holders, some are skill certificate holders, some are pursuing graduation, and many of them are fresh apprentices. So each of them can go between 6 to 36 months as far as the duration is concerned. Again, the duration can be decided by the company um, along with the apprentice. And like I said, there are two components to it. One is the basic training, which is the theoretical training, and the other is the on-the-job training. On-the-job training, of course, is the activity that he does in the industry, on the shop floor, or working in the industry. And for all the roles that are mentioned, which is ITI pass out, graduates, diploma holders, certificate courses, certificate holders, the basic training, which is the theoretical training, is exempted. So they, from day one, actually get on the shop floor and start working on the shop floor. So that's as far as the basic training exemption is concerned. Now, this table actually gives you a view. This slide gives you a view in terms of the amount of money that the organization will be saving in taking an apprentice vis-a-vis a contract labor. Now, for example, or a permanent employee for that matter. For example, if you look at the table here, if you take an example of 10,000 rupees of basic, which needs to be paid to a candidate, then you would be paying him ESI, PF, and you would be paying him on an average of 11,500 rupees per month. Whereas if you pay the same apprentice 10,000 rupees, you would be giving him 10,000. The entire 10,000 gets into his pocket. And of course, there's reimbursement, and you would have a saving of about 3,000 rupees per candidate per month. Not to mention, of course, the fact that he's an apprentice, you don't need to pay bonus to that candidate. So that amount I've not added here because different companies have different policies of paying bonus. So the bonus is also not needed. And you would easily save about 40,000 rupees per candidate per year. And the more the number of candidates, that will be the saving. And you can add bonus to that as well. Not to mention that there is no compliance headache here in terms of ESI and PF, and you don't need to pay minimum wages. These are additional benefits that come by taking in the apprentice. And in case you want to note down the number is given here. If you want to call people after the presentation, after this webinar, you can call them as well. The numbers on the screen: 895-66-65149. So you can call him. Dhruv will be on the call to support you in case you have questions beyond this webinar as well. So the minimum stipend that needs to be paid, like I said, they are not linked to minimum wages. And for a school pass out who's dropped out of school before 10th, then 10th or before 10th, then you have to pay him 5,000 rupees only. That's the minimum prescribed stipend. For 10th pass out, it's 6,000. For a 12th pass out, it is 7,000. And for diploma holders, it is 8,000, and a graduate, it is 9,000. Now, this is the minimum stipend that is prescribed. And if the company wants to pay more, of course, you can pay more. We always suggest that you pay the amount which you are paying your contract labor who's coming into your organization, because if you pay less than that, then the candidate gets disappointed and he would leave before he would finish the entire apprenticeship program. But I just wanted to mention that this is the minimum amount that is stipulated by the government to be paid to the candidate. Just to reiterate the entire thing again, employers can have a training program which is relevant to the industry. The cost of the training will be funded. No ESI, PF contribution. Candidates on contract labor can also be taken in as apprentice. So if you have a contract laborer already in your organization, then you can ask him to give you apprentices, and that can be registered as apprentice as well. There's a clear reduction in cost of hiring these apprentices, reimbursement by the company, delinking to the minimum wages, expenditure on engagement of expenses can be booked under CSR. So for all those organizations who have a CSR liability, this is a great opportunity as well, because you might be aware that for CSR expense, all your expenses should be expenses which are not directly benefiting your organization. It has to be expenses that are given out of the organization. But this is one area. If you take the candidate as an apprentice, he can come and work in your organization, and all the expenses that you're doing on the apprentices, including the stipend that you're paying him, can be booked under CSR funds for your company. So this is a huge benefit that you get by taking candidates in your company. this can be booked under CSR, and you can take all benefits of CSR by bringing in the apprentices. And of course, apprentice can be engaged for by the company for whoever is more than 18 years of age. Technically, it is 16 years as long as it's not hazardous working environment. And if you want the apprentice to be working in multiple shifts, you can do that as well. We would need to take a small approval, and as TPA, we'll be happy to take those approvals for you, and they can work in multiple shifts as well. And employer is not obliged, of course, at the end of it to absorb the apprentices. At the end of the training program, you can decide to take the apprentice on board, or you can ask the apprentice to leave, or you can ask the apprentice to be taken in as contract labor as well. So that's the choice with the industry, and the industry can decide what to do with it. And in case, like I said earlier, industry wants to design a specific course, then you can design your course as well. Just a quick view about Eduvantage. Eduvantage is a third-party aggregator. We work with the Ministry of Skills directly under the apprenticeship scheme, and we work with multiple industry partners as well. And we help the industry in ensuring that the compliance is done. We help in mobilization. We ensure that all the requirements that need to be met are met. If the training program needs to be provided, we do the training of the candidates as well. And we ensure that the money that needs to come into the bank account of the company, the money comes into the bank account of the company. We will ensure that the money comes in, and the entire end-to-end program management of this apprenticeship program will be taken care by the TPA. And there's a small fee that we charge, but that will be very well within the budget, because you would anyway either be paying a contract labor today, or we would ensure that you would get the reimbursement, and that would be covering our service fee very easily. So that's the services that the TPA provides, and Eduvantage is one of the leading TPAs with Ministry of Skills for apprenticeship. And this is the letter that we have from the Ministry of Skills as far as authorizing us for apprenticeship is concerned. So I would want to end my presentation here, and then take in a few questions. In fact, Dhruv, would you want to take in questions now, or?
Yes, sir, we can take a few questions, then maybe
we can take in a few questions.
Yeah. The first question, I think Miss Indira Bansal, she's asking whether a candidate with past employment history can be appointed as apprentice.
Right. So, Ms. Indra, we would want to mention that if the spirit of the apprenticeship program is to train fresh candidates, so as long as the candidate doesn't have an ESI PF number, we can take him as an apprentice. But if the candidate has an ESI and PF number, then we would not suggest that you take him as an apprentice, because that's against the spirit of the program. And if he's appointed in an unorganized sector and he doesn't have an ESI PF, then you can very well take him as an apprentice. But to convert an employee to an apprentice is not suggested by us, and it's against the spirit of the program. The second question by Ms. Indra as well is, what is the commercial benefit interest of the TPA? Like I said 5 minutes ago, so there would be a fee that we would charge, and we would charge the industry directly. And we can separately discuss with you, Ms. Indra, on how the fee is beneficial to you at the end of the day, and it will not hit your pockets at all. And that can be separately discussed offline. So we will, of course, charge the industry, and you will see clear benefits. The reason I'm saying this is because with whichever industry we've been working, we've continued to work, and not one industry has moved away from us from the time we've been working. So there's, we are an 8-year-old organization, and have great credibility in the market as well. Mr. Neeraj is asking, can you mobilize candidates for apprentice? Yes, we can mobilize candidates for apprentices as apprentices for the industry. And we mobilize candidates across the country. So we have our offices and people across the country, and we have clients across the country as well. We have clients in South India, we have clients in Gujarat, we have clients in Assam in Northeast, and multiple clients in North as well. So our clients are there everywhere, and we have our own mobilizing team which mobilizes candidates from Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, West Bengal. That's where most of the labor comes in from. So for people who want labor, we get labor from there. In fact, we would want to mention that even during COVID times, we've been mobilizing candidates for our clients, and we have many hospitals as our clients as well. And as we speak, in fact, government of Bihar is doing drives with us. They are supporting us in the mobilization. And today there's a drive going on in Nevada in Bihar. There was a drive yesterday in Jahanabad and day before yesterday in Gaya. So there are regular drives that are happening, and the government is supporting us in these drives in mobilizing these candidates. And of course, these candidates can be placed in various parts across the country. I hope that clarifies. Ms. Chetna asks, can apprentice work overtime or at night shift? Yes, they can work overtime. There is a small approval that needs to be taken, and once the approval is taken, we can ask them to work in night shift. Many of our clients are actually taking apprentices in different shifts. Also overtime, they can work overtime. The Apprenticeship Act is silent in terms of how much do you have to pay them overtime. We would leave it to the industry. Whatever you're paying the rest of your employees, you can pay the same in terms of overtime charges for the candidates. Ms. Indira also talks about, is outsourcing of apprentice allowed under NAPS? Yes, the government of India has authorized TPAs, and you can outsource the entire apprenticeship program to TPAs. And like I said, Eduvantage is one of the leading TPA who does this program for many organizations. Can apprentice services be utilized under manpower outsourcing model at client premises? Yes, similar model can be done where you're outsourcing the apprentices to a TPA, and they can manage the entire thing. The entire headache is with the TPA. So you don't have to manage everything, from mobilizing candidates to ensuring that their day-to-day activities, supervising them, to ensuring that all the compliance is managed, and finally, of course, certification of these candidates. Mr. Tushar asks, how many apprentices can we hire from batch 1? You can hire 15% of your total employee strength from day 1. So that's possible. But technically speaking, you can hire up to 18%. But once we reach 15%, we'll tell you how you can reach up to 18%. But you can hire 15% of your total employees from day 1 in the apprenticeship program. Mr. Sanjeev says, can we engage apprentices in sales role or admin role, HR roles? Yes, of course you can. Those rules have changed, and you can have admin coming in as apprentice. A fresh person who's joining HR can also join as an HR apprentice, and sales as well. Many organizations are taking sales people, freshers, as apprentice from us, and we are managing their entire portfolio as apprentice. And the company looks at them for 6 months to a year, and those candidates who are good is when the company absorbs them or puts them under a third-party contract. And if they feel that the candidate is not good at the end of the apprenticeship program, then they let them go. So because there's no reason for you to keep them, there's no compliance to keep them as well. So that's done, and a lot of companies today are taking in sales team as apprentice. Makes tremendous sense to take the sales team as apprentice when you hire them. Freshers, I'm talking about freshers, when you hire freshers, feet on street, basically. How many apprentices can we hire from one batch? I just mentioned that. Mr. Vikas says, can we engage non-ITI's diplomas as apprentice? Yes, you can. School dropout can also come as an apprentice, and anyone who would want to be an apprentice can come as an apprentice. Mr. Rakesh says, do we need to keep apprentices as per capacity in each plant? We have 4 or 5 plants across the country. Yes, okay. good question here. The total number of apprentices that are calculated is by the SIN number. Each company will have a unique SIN number. So for one entity, you look at the total number of employees, and 15% of the total number of employees is what the government suggests. So you can place them wherever you would want them. They can all be in one plant, or they can be in multiple plants, and they can be spread across the country as well. So I hope these are some of the questions that I've got. I hope I've answered those questions, Dhruv. And yeah, if there are more questions, we'll take it at the end again.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening the participants on key aspects of apprenticeship program. And we are pretty sure that this will be useful to the industry. And we are already receiving a lot of queries. We have answered a lot of questions. We continue to receive a lot more queries. We shall try to answer each one of them, time permitting. But now, to give the industry perspective on apprenticeship, let me invite someone who has deep and extensive knowledge on this topic, both at policy as well as implementation level. I'm talking of Mr. Amit Mishra. Mr. Mishra heads apprenticeship cell in FICCI. He works very closely with industry and ministry and bridges the gap wherever necessary. Over to you, Amit sir.
Hi, I thank you Dhruv for the introduction, and I would like to say hi to every participant here. In FICCI, we have an apprenticeship cell, and we are supporting our members in engaging apprentices in different sectors. We have also committed around 1 lakh apprentice facilitation to the Ministry of Government, Ministry of Skill Development. We have signed an MOU with the Ministry of Skill Development, and we are supporting our members in getting these apprentices. And one thing I would like to highlight in this COVID situation, that by hiring apprentice, these industry not only getting workforce to train, but also they are getting some burden, financial burden taken away by the reimbursement which they get from the government of India. And I can say that we have around 150 that we have continuously. We are monitoring our members. Although FICCI has around 2.5 lakhs members, but 150 that we are monitoring currently, all these industry members are getting reimbursement regularly from the government. And the introduction of the TPA was very well received decision that was taken by the Ministry of Skill Development. And these TPAs are taking away all the burden from the industry side, from they're providing end-to-end solution, from sourcing of the candidates to mobilization, any kind of verification, police verification, whatever is required by the industry. They need not be worried about that. And we also work through TPAs only. We have empaneled some of the TPAs in our skill development committee, and we are taking their services regularly. And this apprenticeship scheme is really good for the because it poses a win-win situation for both the industry and the candidates. Wherever the candidates gets a hands-on experience on the practical skills, industry also get a chance to make us future-ready workforce for themselves, and they also get reimbursement from the government. So some financial burden that, as I already said, that has taken away by these from this industry. So that's what I would like to say. Thank you so much, Abhishek and Dhruv.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amit sir, and thank you for giving the industry feedback about the NAPS. And in fact, we have received some more queries at the time when Amit sir was speaking. And Abhishek sir, can you please?
So I think Mr. Tushar has asked one more question. Which authority will give approval to call apprentice at night shift? So As far as authority is concerned, let me clarify that there's a sea change in the recent times as far as authority and monitoring is concerned. So unlike the previous decades where it was completely government driven and government monitored, today the monitoring which is being done by sector skill councils, and the sector skill councils are actually industry representatives. For example, automobile sector is managed by automobiles sector skill council, and automobile sector skill council is actually a council which has been formed by a few large automobile companies together, and the chairman of the automobile sector skill council is actually from the industry himself. So, and the person who is actually monitoring this is from the industry himself. So it's not a government employee who's monitoring it. It's actually representatives from the industry who's monitoring it. And Mr. Tushar, thank you for this question. Actually, it's a very relevant question. That's the reason why this program is currently moving at the pace it's moving in the last 2 years. That's because people who are monitoring it and managing it are people from the industry. They understand the pain that the industry goes through, and they are very industry friendly, and they are the ones who give approval to the companies or to organizations to have approvals for night shift. So it is not any government department or not a government employee, but it is actually an industry representative which does that. And it's all, like I said, paperless. Everything happens without any paper moving. And also, of course, I have to mention in that same breath that he would not come to your organization to inspect, to view, and give the approval. All of this will happen on emails and telephone discussions at max. So that's the authority. The sector skill councils are the authority to provide the approvals for night shift. Yeah, so Surijit sir has come on the call as well. So Dhruv.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for answering that query. And let me now welcome and invite Mr. Surajit Roy. Mr. Roy headed the apprenticeship division in NSDC, National Skills Development Corporation, and was instrumental in drafting and creating all the changes that we see in recent industry-friendly apprenticeship rules. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, so Dhruv, you will have to tell me what do you want me to do? I mean, what is the...
Right. So I'll give a quick background, sir. Thank you for coming in. So we had a quick discussion on the apprenticeship program. We mentioned the highlights of the program. We also talked about the NAPS scheme and how the industry can benefit from the NAPS scheme. And if you look at the question and answer panel, there were some interesting questions that came in as well. And we, in the meanwhile, took up most of these questions and answered answered these questions. And from the perspective, when you from after the time you came in to the apprenticeship ecosystem, you brought in so many changes and made this industry friendly. And that we would want to hear from you, and the industry would want to hear from you in terms of how do you see this changing, and how do you see the industry benefiting from it? Because you were the ones who was the instrumental person to change the entire apprenticeship landscape, and who better than you explaining this scheme to the industries?
Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. What I would like to say is apprenticeship is that bridge which has been missing in the entire ecosystem between skilling and employability. And as a concept, it has always been there, and it has been accepted by the industry as a very good concept, learning tool, training tool before you actually employ people. But it has not been put into practice in India, although the law has been there for 60 years now, more than 60 years, because I think basically because industry found it to be not useful, not serving the purpose. But what I want to share with you is that the laws were and Abhishek and Dhruv must have covered it, but let me spend about 5 minutes on this. What has happened in 2014-15 is phenomenal. I think even the government was not aware of what it was actually giving to the industry. It was almost a CII wish list. They had been telling the government that we want to do apprenticeship because apprenticeship is the way forward, and in Europe, it is used as a very good last mile training tool, and we want to use it, but make the laws, amend the laws in such a way that we are able to use it. Let us design the program. So in 2014-15, the Act and rules were amended, and believe you me, there is nothing in that law which, if you ask a question, I used to tell people when in question and answers sessions, if you ask a question, before you ask a question, can I do this under this law, the answer would be yes. So, and we can test it even now. So what the law says, firstly, it is law, and a lot of industry doesn't know it is law. So any company which has more than 30 employees, including contract employees on its rolls, they are mandated to engage apprentices at 2.5% of their workforce. The other part of law is they are mandated to pay a minimum prescribed stipend, which is a fixed between 5,000 and 9,000, which is the minimum. You can pay more depending on who you are engaging as an apprentice, from class 5 pass upwards to graduates. Beyond this, everything in law, everything that Act and rules say is actually discretion. It talks about designing your own courses. There are government notified courses which some of you in the manufacturing sector may be knowing. They are called the Director General of Training courses, which are called designated trades. Then there are some courses being run for pursuing graduates under BOAT. But beyond that, if the industry wants to design its own courses, it is allowed to do so under the optional trade window, which Abhishek must have touched. And you don't need approvals from the government to run these courses. You have to post it on the portal. There is a template which the NSDC has designed to make things easier for the industry, and you just need to post that on the portal. It does not take more than a week to get all of this done. The duration of these courses, the discretion is, there's a huge discretion with the industry, between 6 months to 3 years, based on what kind of courses you want to run. You decide, the industry decides. The basic training program, and there are two parts of the apprenticeship program. There is a classroom basic training, classroom or labs, and the exposure to the shop floor. What is the proportion between between the two you want to divide, OJT and basic training, left to the industry? Where do you want to do the basic training? In your own premises or in the premises of a technical training partner? Left to the industry. Apprenticeship is now no longer restricted to the manufacturing sector. All sectors, who, as I said, any establishment more than 30, whether it's the service sector or the manufacturing sector, they are mandated to engage apprentices. And the smaller companies, if they see value in apprenticeship, any company which has more than 3 employees up to 29 employees, they can also engage apprentices. There is no restriction, but there is no mandate. Then there is an upper limit. I mean, 2.5% is the minimum limit, but if you want to engage more apprentices, up to 15%, you can engage apprentices. So this is a plethora of discretion which has been given to the industry to come forward and use it the way it should be used, as a last mile training tool. The point is, you are recruiting people. Why do you don't need to recruit and train. You train, and then out of the best of these, you recruit and you train them on your own shop floor. I mean, this was not available earlier. Even today, when you recruit people, you take them up from the education sector. It is an interview game. If they impress you in the interviews, you take them. Then you spend money training them. And some of them, there is a misfit and there is a lot of attrition. While in apprenticeship, the people who settle in with you, not only do they know the culture of the company, apart from the job role, they come to know the culture of the company. You come to know what are the strengths and weaknesses of these apprentices. You are the ones who actually shortlist the apprentices. You are the ones who train them. You are the one who teach them. They know your culture. You know their traits. And the whole thing is designed. It starts because you need those people, because 2.5 may be a social mandate, but If you do more means you need those people. You need those people, you are training them, you are selecting them, you are teaching them, they are passing your assessment, and after that, if you don't engage them or employ them, then there is something wrong in your process. I mean, the law cannot be more forthcoming and more liberal than that. Then they are not to be treated as workers. The section 18 clearly says they are not workers. There is no EPF, there is no ESI, and not only does the Apprenticeship Act say that they are not workers, the ESI EPF Act also say that apprentices are treated to be workers except those appointed under the Apprenticeship Act. So be careful. Don't just pick up someone and make him, label him as an apprentice. It has to be under the Apprenticeship Act. So while you are meeting the mandate of law, which you anyway you need to meet, why don't you use this tool to train people first and then recruit the best out of them? So basically, essentially, this is it. There is nothing more beyond this. Very simple law to implement. Returns are minimal. I think there is only 1 or 2 returns which say ki maintain a diary of an apprentice and put your apprenticeship plans periodically on the portal, and the entire program is run on a portal. Nothing needs to move on paper. No person needs to move. Even if you move, it's not going to help. Everything is automated and run on one portal. And the Dhruv and Abhishek must have covered it, but it's working. Over and above this, as if this was not enough of a cake being given to the industry, and I keep forgetting it because while people talk about NAPS, I forget about NAPS because it's just an icing on the cake. The earlier you forget about it, the better you will use the program. So there is a subsidy which is available to partly reimburse your cost of basic training and stipend, which is also given to you online on the portal. You don't have to run around. There are delays, but once this thing streamlines, once the process streamlines, you should be getting it in 15 to 30 days. But as I said, look at the value proposition the apprenticeship program offers you, and soon you may not require or you may not want NAPS. And if there are larger industries here, you should also first you taste it, you yourself experience it. It's a fantastic program. I think it's the only demand-led program where industry is at the center and the youth is at the center. State, the sector skill councils, the DGT systems, everybody is meant to be a facilitator. So it is the only demand-driven system in the entire skill ecosystem. It is the only program which actually connects the education output with the labor input. So have a look at it. And one step forward is going to be the apprenticeship embedded degree program. We can talk about it later because it's just rolling out. So that's all I had to say. Dhruv, Abhishek, you want me to cover something else, or I can take some questions if there are any, but the answer will be yes.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for your time, sir. And actually we have one question, it is from Mr. Neeraj Nagar. And he says that if it is the act, that is Apprenticeship Act of 1961 is act, then why it is not followed by major industries? And is it because of the lack of awareness, or are there any penal clauses in the act?
It is not followed. Yeah, this part I forgot, that the act and rules were amended in 2014-15. We are in 2020. NAPS came in 2016. It is, despite no awareness program, the optional trades window in the last 1.5 years, when we've actually understood the value proposition and taking it to the industry, has gone up 5 times over the last 1.5 years. So it is, and now the optional trade window is occupying 30% of that entire kitty. The kitty may be small, apprenticeship. So what happened in 60 years has happened, 30% of that has happened under the optional trade window in 1.5 years. So this is despite, why it has not taken off is only now because of lack of awareness. I think when the industry understands what a fantastic program, this is what we need. Why do we spend money on training people and then leave us? Why do we spend money on recruiting and re-recruiting? The attrition rates are much high, much lower in apprenticeship than as compared to regular employees, because a person who learns on your shop floor, he knows the culture, the chances of his leaving are relatively less. So cost of re-recruitment is less, cost of training, post-recruitment training is zero. There is no labor law, there is no EPF, there is no ESI, and if someone wants, there is NAPS also. So why should anybody not look at it? Only thing is there is no awareness. Why it was not happening for 60 years, I told you, before the law was amended. You were told as an industry, these are the trades, you need to do 6 electrical engineers this year, you need to do 6 civil engineers this year, and the government will tell you, you may not need them. So the industry was not interested, and there has been, for good or bad, lack of enforcement. So both put together, the program never took off. Even now, there is no enforcement. What is happening is by will, the government is saying that we will enforce, but first let us make the industry understand the value proposition so that there is no need for enforcement. Only thing government has not done is awareness programs it needs to do. The state government functionaries still don't understand this optional trades. The DGT systems also optional trades. I think a lot of work needs to be done on the awareness side. And this is bound to take off. 30% in 1.5 years is not a joke. 5 times increase despite so many problems, not a joke. It is bound to take off, and actually a lot will depend on the larger industries telling their ancillaries and franchisees that use this program, and you can use our shop floor also to train your apprentices. That is also allowed under the law. And you should look at not attrition, you should look at enriching your entire sector with skilled, ready to employ manpower if they get exposed to the on the job on your shop floors. So even if they don't join you, you are enriching that entire sector. They will join someone below down the line. So gradually you will have that entire skill force, the way they are looking, the competencies of the skill force, the readiness of an educated guy who has a exposure to that shop floor, including the service sector. So all of them, the entire sector will get enriched. And from the supply side, one point I missed it is no more restricted to technical people, ITI engineers. You can take a class 5 upwards, depending on what kind of person you are looking at, and recruit him as an apprentice, a graduate, a social science graduate, a class 10 pass, class 12 pass, class 8 pass, and you train him, you give him the basic training, train him on your shop floor, get going.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Dhruv, I'll just take a question that has come in. Couple of questions. One is Mr. Piyush, who's asking, what value will TPA bring in if we engage one? So what I would want to mention here is that the TPA manages everything for the organization. I mean, TPA can even mobilize the candidates for you, manage the entire compliance part of it, look at the training perspective of the candidate. There's a basic training that needs to be provided to the, finally assessment and certification of the candidate. The entire thing can be offloaded to a TPA.
Coordination with the sector skill councils, approval of the curriculum, whatever approvals are required, the subsidies if you want, the reimbursement of the subsidies, good guys to have around.
Right. So thank you for endorsing us, sir. And that actually answers Mr. Tushar's question as well, that he says he's applied for reimbursement, but he's still not received. So we'll be happy to engage with you offline and see how we can help you.
And all these TPAs are not run of the mill, in the sense they are not fly-by-night operators. They're actually, there's a process of empanelment. So only TPAs are those who are empaneled by the government of the Ministry of Skilling, and their list is available on the portal. So there may be a lot of people pretending to be TPAs, but please see the list on the portal. All this information is available on the apprenticeship portal.
Right, sir. So we'll be happy to discuss offline, Mr. Tushar, and see how we can help you in the reimbursement as well. We've been quite successful in getting reimbursements for all our clients till today. And there are small niggling issues that we need to look at. We'll be happy to engage separately and get that going. Right. So I guess we've answered all the questions, and I'm hoping that it was insightful for everyone who's come on the panel here on the webinar here. And Dhruv, you would want to close the webinar?
Yes, I'm sure we have an enthralling session, and I'm sure it is beneficial to the industry and all the participants that we have here. I'm sure they will be thinking about implementing this scheme in their premises. And many thanks to all our speakers. Many thanks, Abhishek sir. Amit sir, many thanks to you for joining in. And Surajit sir, thank you again for joining us here. And thank you from EduVantage. And in case there are any queries, we'll be happy to connect with you. And Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye
everyone.
bye. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.